Alright, so here is test prep for test 1-2. There are 63 questions. This test is going to cover chapter 1, lesson 3, and then chapter 2, lesson 1, 2, and 3. So it's all we've covered from chapter 1 and chapter 2. Part 1 is question 1 through 20. It is conjugating verbs. These are all the verbs, or a sampling of all the types of verbs that we've looked at so far. Most of these are stem changing verbs. O to UE, E to IE, E to I. This is a yo form changer. That's a yo form changer. U to UE. Okay. CER and the yo form CIR and the yo form becomes ZCO. So I just took a sampling of all the verbs that we've looked at. These are the ones that are going to be on your test for sure. Okay, so let me make sure there's no glare on this. So what I would do is go ahead and when you're studying these, I would memorize them in groups. So group them according to how they stem change. So like this is an O to UE, that's an O to UE, and you would memorize those together. You'll have to go back in your textbook and look and see how each one, or in your notes, and look and see how each one is conjugated. Remember that the nosotros form does not stem change. Okay. So what this activity or section is going to actually look like, it says conjugate the following verbs in the present tense based on the subject pronoun given. So I'm going to have, let's see, you'll have a blank and then a subject pronoun and then a verb. Okay. And if you counted those, you're going to notice that there aren't actually 20 in there. That means that some of them are used multiple times. So this is what this is going to look like. Blank, subject, verb. You have to conjugate this verb for the subject. So this is an O to UE stem changer, and the ending is going to be a regular ER. So it becomes vuelvo. Okay. Let's see, what about ustedes for jugar? U to UE, regular AR verb, so this becomes juegan. Okay, so that's how you do section 1. Section 2 says write the correct form of the possessive adjective. So possessive adjectives are like mi, tu, su, nuestro, su. All right. So it's my, your, his, her, your, ours, theirs, y'all's. So what this is going to be is I'm going to give you kind of the translation that I'm looking for and then a noun. So it'll be something like, oh, this is part 2. This is 21 to 27. So it's possessive adjectives. Okay. So I'll give you a blank and then I'll give you what I want you to say. Okay. So you want to say your. You want to use the informal your, and it needs to match fresas in gender and number because it's an adjective. So to say your informal, we say tu. If you put an accent mark, I'll take points off, okay? Because tu is your, tu with an accent mark is you, okay? They're completely different things. This is a subject. This is a possessive adjective. You have to know the difference, okay? So if you write this one on your test, I will take some points off. All right, so back to this. This, remember that if the noun is plural, your adjective has to be plural. There's no gender change for tu. So since this is plural, this has to be plural. It just becomes tus, right? If, however, I had something like our, and I had profesores, okay? The possessive adjective for our is nuestro, right? So, I already said. So, tu, or mi, tu, su, nuestro, su. So, our is nuestro. This is plural. So, we say nuestros. Okay? But this is the only one that we care about gender. If I had profesoras, this means that it's feminine. So this also has to be feminine, right? So nuestras, that's an A. It's a terrible A, but it is an A. Nuestras, all right? Okay, so the only one, me, tu, su, those don't matter the gender, they just matter the number. Nuestro, you have to make it match in gender and number. Okay, so that's all you're doing for that one. Be careful when you're looking at we look at the nouns. You've got to be able to tell if they are masculine or feminine, just in case you have this. Okay. All right. They should be pretty obvious though. Part 3 is 28 to 35. This is going to be saber versus conocer. Okay. Remember that those both mean to know. One is used, so this one is used for familiarity. Familiarity, that looks right. And people. This is used for facts. Okay. So conocer is used with familiarity and people. When you know a person, saber is like knowing a piece of information. Familiarity is kind of a broad term. You can be familiar with an author's work of their books, like are you familiar with the works of Mark Twain? You can be familiar with a city, like are you familiar with Dallas? I guess that's really books, movies, authors, like are you familiar with these things? And then people. Facts would be like, do you know where Walmart is in Dallas? Versus, are you familiar with Walmart? Or, yeah, familiar with Walmart or familiar with Dallas. Okay, so you're going to have a sentence like, blank or to blank, ¿dónde están tus padres? So it's do you or you know where your parents are. Okay. So because it's where they are that it's asking if you know, that is a piece of information. So that's a fact. So it's got to be saber. And then how do we conjugate saber for to? We say sabes. Sabes. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Blank, el blank el libro de Mark Twain. So he knows the book of Mark Twain or Mark Twain's book. This is familiarity. Remember that if you know a book or a movie or a play, it is familiarity. So this has to be conoce. Okay? If you had, let's see, yo blank a Raquel. I know Raquel or Rachel. So that's a person, obviously. So this has to be conocer. Remember that conocer is one of the irregular yo forms. Since it ends in CER, the yo form ends in ZCO instead of just CO, because it has to preserve that sound. Conozco. All right. Remember, if it's a city, the word for city is ciudad. Ciudad. So if you had something like that, it would be a familiarity with a place. So that's conocer. Remember that saber, the yo form, is also irregular, and it's yo sé, not yo sabo. A lot of students try to say yo sabo, they just take the ER off and add an O, but it is irregular, so it's yo sé. All right, so go back and remind yourself how to conjugate both of those. So you have to know how to differentiate in the sentence what it's asking for. Is it familiarity, people, or facts? And then you have to know how to conjugate it to fit into the sentence. Okay. Part 4 is direct object pronouns. So 4 is 36 to 40. Direct object pronouns. The directions say, rewrite the following sentences and replace the direct object, which is underlined, with the correct direct object pronoun. Now, make sure that you're paying attention to not only how to replace the direct object with the pronoun, but also where to put the pronoun in the sentence. Remember that if there's one conjugated verb in the sentence, the pronoun has to go before the conjugated verb. If there's an infinitive in the sentence or a present progressive, so estar plus a gerund or a present participle, then you've got an option. Your pronoun can go either before the first conjugated verb or after and attached to the infinitive or the present participle, which is also called a gerund. I normally call it a gerund. So you might have a sentence like, él visita a su prima. Okay. So this is a direct object, right? Who does he visit? His cousin. So we have to figure out which direct object pronoun to use. Remember that they are me, te, lo, la, nos, los, and las. All right. So with direct objects, you have to think about the gender. Now this is a prima, which means that it's a girl cousin. So that means that we have to use la as our direct object pronoun. Now when I rewrite this, I'm going to have to put the pronoun in front of this verb because this verb is conjugated and there's only one verb. So it has to go in front. So it's going to be él la visita. Okay? And that's it. That's all you got to do. All right? Super easy. If I had a sentence like, I want to eat the apples, where the apples are the direct object pronoun, or the direct object. I want to replace it with a pronoun. Las manzanas is plural and feminine, so it's got to be las. Like saying, I want to eat them, and los and las mean them when they're direct object pronouns. But here I've got an option because now I've got an infinitive and I have a conjugated verb. So you have an option where you can put your pronoun. You can either say yo las quiero comer, or you can say yo quiero comer las. Either one is fine. It just can't go right here, okay? So you would say Yo las quiero comer. Okay. You would pick one. You wouldn't do both. Okay. So that's why they're in parentheses. You can put it here or you can put it here. This is attached. This is not attached. Okay. I hope that makes sense. All right. So that is that. Okay. Make sure that you're picking the right gender, remember? Because since you have lo and las, lo, la, los, las, you have to be sure that you're picking the right gender. If it's a person, you have to pick the right gender. Part 5 is 41 to 45. This is the present progressive. Remember that you use the present progressive when you're talking about that you're doing something right that moment. It's not a future. It's not a general statement of, oh, I do this. It is a, in this moment, this is what I'm doing. Your friend calls you and says, ¿Qué estás haciendo? What are you doing right now? And you'd say, Yo estoy estudiando. I'm studying. Or if you're going to be really cheeky, you'd say, Yo está hablando a ti. They ask you what you're doing right now, you're like, I'm talking to you, obviously. Okay? So, you form the present progressive by using estar plus the present participle or gender. No, gerund. Okay? These are the same thing, we just call them two different things. Okay, so what this is going to look like is I'm going to give you a subject pronoun and a verb. Okay, this says form the present progressive based on the subject and the verb given. So I'm going to give you something like el bebé. Okay. We want to say he is drinking. Right this second, he's got a mouthful of water. All right. So what we want to say is we have to conjugate estar based on this subject. Okay. Because even though the only thing I've given you is this verb right here, to form the present progressive, which is what you're being told to do, you have to have estar. So we conjugate estar based on this subject, and then this verb right here becomes my present participle or my gerund, okay? So we start off and we say él está, and then remember that if we have an AR verb, it becomes ando. If we have an ER, or IR, it becomes yendo. Okay, so to form my present participle, if I have an AR verb, my ending is ando. I take off the AR and add ando. If my verb is an ER or IR verb, I take off the ER, IR, and I add yendo. That's an I. Okay, so beber is an ER verb, so I'm going to take off ER and I'm going to add yendo. So this is going to look like está bebiendo. That's it. That's all I got to do. Okay. The trick is going to be remembering what these parts mean and remembering that you have to use estar. Okay. The present progressive is estar plus the present participle. You're conjugating estar based on the subject. You're making the verb into the present participle. Okay, that's going to be the hardest part. If you had something like, because on the test, I'm not going to say estar plus the present participle. The directions say, form the present progressive based on the subject and the verb given, and that's all it says. Then there is a a subject pronoun, and a verb. Let's see. Thinking. Okay. All right. So my subject, conjugate estar based on the subject. So I say yo estoy. Then I take this verb and I make my present participle. I take off the AR and I add ando, so it becomes estudiando. Okay? So, I know I've said this already, like twice. If you can remember that the present progressive has to have estar and the present participle, then you should be fine. Okay? The issue is going to be remembering that estar is in there. All right? Parts 6 and 7 are translation, but it's vocabulary. So it's not like full sentences. So part 6 is translate the following words, phrases to English. So this is Spanish to English. It says include the definite article when applicable. Okay. So that means if I said something like la pelota, okay, you can't just say ball, okay? You can't just ignore this word like it doesn't exist. You have to say the ball, okay? This is going to be 5 questions, so 46 through 50. Okay, 46 through 50. 7 is going to be English to Spanish. It is also 5, so it's 51 to 55. Once again, it says translate the following words, phrases to Spanish. Include the definite article when applicable. Something that would not be applicable would be like, I'm trying to think of one of your verbs. Let's just say I know that we had to throw. One of your verbs was to throw. So if you have to throw, you're going to say tirar. Okay? That does not have a definite article, so that is not applicable in this case. But if I said something like the dad, you have to say el padre. Okay, you can't just say padre, you have to say el padre. This is going to be over all the vocabulary from chapter 1, lesson 3, and chapter 2, lesson 1, 2, and 3. So it was family, it was food, it was sports, and it was the night out with the singer and the band and the orchestra. So I hope that you guys have been studying that vocabulary because yes, I know it's a lot of vocabulary, but there's only 5 each and they're spaced out. That's why I like for you to be studying your vocabulary a little bit at a time. If you'll spend 5 or 10 minutes every day kind of going over your words, then when you come to a test, then it's not going to be a big deal because you've already spent time memorizing them and you're not just going to throw them into your short-term memory right before a test, okay? So, then the last section is, I think I have 2 sections 7s. It's actually the last section is section 8. I accidentally wrote 7. This is going to be translations and it's going to be full sentences. So it's the last section. 8, it is 56 to 63. Translation. It says, translate the following sentences to Spanish. These are going to deal mostly with tener expressions, like I'm hot, I'm cold, I'm thirsty, I'm tired, I'm scared. Okay? Remember that those are specific expressions used with the verb tener. Right? If you do not give me a tener expression, you will get points counted off. Okay? Because like when in English we say I'm hot or I'm cold, I am. But in Spanish we say it I have hot or heat and I have cold. Okay? Tener expression. I'm preaching that to you. Tener expressions. These are also going to deal with comparisons, superlatives, and then I think there is one that is a direct object pronoun sentence. Okay? So if I had something like, we are sleepy. Okay? This is not we are tired, because we are tired would be estar plus cansados. This is a tener expression. Sleepy, we are sleepy is a tener expression. That's what I'm saying. You have to memorize the tener expressions. You can't use anything else, all right? Because this was covered, those expressions. So, we are sleepy is like saying we have sleepiness. So, we would say nosotros tenemos sueño. Okay? That's it. Now, you don't have to include the subject pronoun because tenemos is obvious. The only subject that goes with tenemos is nosotros. So you don't have to explain that or clarify that. It's obvious what that is. So you could leave this off if you wanted to. For the comparisons, you might have something like your formal mom is shorter than his mom. Okay. So remember that when we have a comparison, we say más, adjective que, menos, adjective que, or we say tan, adjective como, which is more than, less than, or the same as, or as. So this is shorter is like saying more short. So we say más. So you formal, or sorry, your, sorry, that should say your. Formal. Because I've indicated if I want it to be formal, you have to say su mamá or madre, either one is fine. Es más bajo, oops, que, that's not a G, it's a Q, que su, his mamá. Okay. Remember that su can mean your formal, hers, or his. All right, so más bajo que, shorter. Okay, that's what that means. ¿Qué más? Remember superlative? So a comparison is like comparing a couple people, one person to another. Superlative is like saying somebody is the most of everybody, the most of everyone in the world, the most of the class, the least of the family, that kind of thing. It's an extreme. So if I said something like, let's see, oh, I just marked on my pants. Maria is the smartest of the class. You would say Maria es la girl más inteligente of the class. De la clase. All right. This indicates the most, and this is my group that I'm comparing her to. De la clase, of all. Now, if I said something like, if I compared it to of all, if I had a sentence that was of all, okay, you'd say de todos, of all, of everyone. Okay. Remember that there were a few comparisons and superlatives that were irregular. So you'll have to go back and look those up. Some of them were like bueno. We don't say más bueno, we say mejor. And we don't say, like, if we want to say, so this is good, this is better, el mejor is the best. Good, better, the best. Okay? Other ones are mayor or viejo. Viejo is old. Mayor is older, and el mayor is the oldest. Now, if it's a girl that you're referring to, you say la, all right? So if I had something like Roberto is younger than Amelia. You would say Roberto es menor. Okay. The word for young is joven, but you don't say más joven. Joven becomes menor, younger que Amelia. Okay. So you got to be aware of these irregular ones. Okay, so you'll need to go back and look all those up. Oh, let me make sure. Okay, then the last type of sentence is going to be direct object pronouns. So I might say something like we. Ooh, that's not how you spell we. That's hard. We listen to them. Is that a good one? Yeah, that'll work. Okay. We listen to them. Now, them might be, let's say that them is the lessons, so it's not people. So we listen to them, lessons. I'm going to tell you if I have I might have something like we listen to it, like the lesson. I'm going to give you the gender of the it or them. Okay, so you have to make sure that you replace the direct object pronoun with the correct gender of the object pronoun in Spanish. So them is either going to be los or las because it's plural. All right. This is feminine, so it has to be las. All right, so all this is going to be replaced by las. The verb listen is escuchar. So we'd say nosotros escuchamos las. Oh, wait, you're saying that's not right. Well, how right you are that that's not right. What have I done wrong? This is in the wrong place. If you're not careful, you're going to rewrite it in exactly the order of this English sentence. We listen to them. We listen to them. All right? So if you're not careful, you're going to do something like this and you're going to get points taken off. Because how many verbs are in this sentence? There's just one, and it's conjugated. So we know that if I have a pronoun, the only place that it can go in a sentence is before the conjugated verb. So it's got to be nosotros las escuchamos. Once again, you can leave the nosotros off and just say las escuchamos because this is a given based on this conjugation of the verb. Okay? All right. So some of the words that you're going to need to know for this section, some of the vocabulary words that you're going to need to know are brother, tall, to study, science, history, easy, dad, nice. Okay. The other words are going to be the irregular comparatives, like bueno becomes mejor, or bad becomes worse, so malo becomes peor. I'm not going to give you those because I'm expecting you to memorize those, all right? So you will have some of those irregular comparisons. Okay, but those are the other vocabulary words that you're going to need to know. You should know them all. I'm just giving you them just so there'll be no confusion. Then there are 3 extra credit questions. These are coming out of the cultural notes from the chapter. They are going to be the two cultural lessons were over Uruguay y Paraguay. So there's 2 separate ones. I'm sorry I don't have the page numbers in front of me, but there's a little section, like a little couple paragraphs written about Paraguay, and there's a couple paragraphs written about Uruguay, and it's true false. So cierto o falso. Cierto means true, falso obviously means false. You just circle if it's true or false, and then you get points if you get it right. One thing I did want to remind you, or 2 things I want to remind you. Verses on tests are major extra credit, which means that if you, let's say you get 2 questions wrong on this test, which you're not because I know you're all going to get 100. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, you missed 2 questions on the test, but you wrote down 2 verses. Those verses cancel out the wrong answers, so then you would get 100 on the test. Okay? Yes, you may use any verse from the Bible. It does not have to just be verses from the textbook. There are verses in the textbook, but if you wanted to memorize your favorite Bible verse in Spanish, I of course would not ever stop you from memorizing the Bible. Yes, you may do Jesus wept, but you better get it exactly right. I have people try to do it all the time and they misspell it. They don't add the reference. They just throw out some words and say, oh, that's pretty close. You don't get credit if you don't get it exactly right, because those are 2 words and a reference. All right, so you got to get that one exactly right. Most of the time, if you attempt a verse, I'm going to give it to you, but that one you have to get exactly right. Okay, that's the Bible, but it's kind of a cop-out on tests. The other thing was, I do definitely want to tell you that yes, we go over stuff in class and I send you videos on grammar and stuff, but I expect you to be reading the textbook as well, because your textbook may make a minute point that maybe I forget to say in class, or they have a different way of telling you how to look at a problem. So I expect you to be reading the textbook at home, like when we go over the grammar. You should take notes in class, listen to what I have to say, and then you also need to be reading it for yourself. The thing that I have found, okay, to study for tests, you obviously need to be studying your vocabulary. You need to be reading the textbook. You need to be reading your notes. I recommend that you look at your homework as well, because sometimes test problems look exactly like homework problems. So you definitely need to be looking over your homework as well. One thing that I have found for the verb section, that is some can be make or break for some people, because if you get it, there's no mercy on the verbs. I'm pretty cutthroat on the verbs. You got to get them right, especially since I tell you exactly what verbs are going to be on the test. I expect you to know those. What I have found students really do well, in fact, one of my favorite stories from teaching is I had a student who was really struggling with verbs. He came to tutoring, talked to me. I said, okay, here's how I want you to study for the next test. Told him how to do it. Next test, totally different. I mean, I think he may have gotten every single verb or close to every single verb right on that next test. And I said, hey, what's the deal? What did you do differently? And he said, well, I studied like you told me to. So score 1 for me. So what I told him to do is you should be making a quiz for yourself. What do I mean by that? I gave you like 17 verbs, okay, that you need to know. You know how it's going to look on the test. It's going to be random subject pronouns and then paired up with verbs. So you should be making yourself a quiz. Like, put a blank, randomly put a subject pronoun. Just go through nosotros, okay, on and on and on. Then you might say, all right, just pick some verbs from your list. Será, volver, hacer. Okay? Close your book, put your notes away. Take that like a test. Okay? Practice checking your brain. Practice searching your brain for the answers. Because I found that if you'll study like this, your grades will go up. Okay? It's the act of searching your brain that's going to push that information from short-term memory to long-term memory. And that's what we want. That's going to help you. It also helps your brain to practice for a test situation. Okay, so that will help you. I think that's it. I think that's all I've got. So let me know if you have any questions, if I can help you before you turn in you take your tests. And yeah, that's it. All right, so good luck.